All right. I'm still learning this technology here and got some great new technology. I see we got a handful, very large handful of people on. Hopefully you can see me okay. If you can't see me, and don't be afraid to send me a quick message in the chat box. There's our audio. Got it. Sorry, Charmaine. My issue was I didn't know how to turn on the mic. It happens. But hopefully everybody can hear me now, and we'll get started here in 1 second. See, like everything we have in life, there's a learning curve, and that learning curve is how we get excited. So thank you, Shay. Audio is good. Good. Nobody said how good I look, though, right? I mean, is the video good? I can hear now. Thank you. I can see and hear you. Thank you, Charmaine. So, but you still didn't say how I look. So just another minute or two, and then we're going to get started. Can you guys see the screen with my slides up? Do you see that? Somebody send me a message if you can. We can't see you. Let's see. Can't see me. Can you see the slides? Somebody see a message with the slides? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Benjamin. Let's get ready to rock. So I'm really excited about doing this webinar for a couple reasons. And what I want you to understand, whether you coach, play, whatever, is that we all go through our own ups and downs. Golf is such a unique game, and it makes it wonderful for me to be able to work in this sport with so many elite players. And the reason why I love working in golf so much is that the challenge of the game is both physical and more so mental, because what we normally expect from our game is what creates our troubles. We want to play great, and the drive and the draw of the game, the intoxicating and addictive nature of the game is the same facet that frustrates us. Golf has so many unique differences compared to other sports. We can't play defense. You can't really do work in another part of the game and still provide a contribution. Coaches really cannot communicate with you during the course of a round, except for probably in college golf, maybe a little bit in high school golf. You're out there on your own. You got to figure it out. They can't call timeouts, and you're out there for an exorbitantly long time. So we're going to talk about how some of the most common mental mistakes that people make and help you understand how you can avoid them, but more importantly, learn more about your game. This is a regular conversation I have with my tour players, some of the best of the best. And for instance, I even had a phone call yesterday when we looked at some of the most simple facets of what was changing in one player's routines, process, and their attitude on the course. Now, what makes the mental game so difficult is that you don't have a thought bubble above people's heads. Those thought bubbles, I can't look at somebody and say, how are you feeling today? And they can tell me, I'm feeling okay, or man, I'm a little frustrated, but I can't really see that dialogue. Now, I'm not saying it would be easier if I was a physical trainer or swing coach. Probably the opposite. But when I talk to my physically based people, they tend to have opportunities to get objective measurements that can give insight on the spot. TrackMan, Foresight, Body Track, K-Vest. They can do a TPI screen. They can look at different body changes. And we don't always get that. And so I think it's important that we understand that the mental game, what we many times project, is not really reflective of what we think inside of our head. And the core of mental processing, the mental game per se, is that what we do and the struggle with it is many times requires us to be truly honest with ourselves as our own coach, as our own psychologist, and as our own performer and competitor. And many times we don't really want to raise the veil and show that because we want to project ourselves to be more mentally strong. So let me take one other step back. One of the words that I don't really like is a terminology called mental toughness. And let me explain. I think mental skills are skills. We are not born with this innate ability to go out and grind on a 4-foot putt. It's a skill that we learn. But no two people are going to grind in the course of a round, whether it's to shoot 57, 58, 59, or to turn a less than ideal round into a more beneficial round. Those are skills that we learn, and we have to draw on it from something. And we draw on that from our experiences and our beliefs, and really that interaction between the two. So what I want players to do is to gain wisdom about themselves in their mental skill set. Instead of being tough, I want them to be mentally experienced. I want them to be mentally wise. I want them to gain wisdom about the skill sets that they bring to each and every challenge. And when we can gain wisdom about ourselves mentally, then we can build belief in who we are to take on any challenge that we have. When we lose that wisdom is when we make these mistakes, and these common mental mistakes that golfers make. So let's dig in. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to identify these most common mistakes that I see golfers make, how you can avoid them. I'm going to go over some proven strategies that I know you can start implementing immediately. And at the end, I'm going to show you how you can get some tools and strategies like this on a webinar on a weekly basis. So it's not a sales thing, but I'm going to give you an offer at the end. So hang with me. I think it's really, really valuable. But I want to dig into this content right now. Okay. So now, how many times have you heard this in your own head? But if it came from a player, you would think differently. Oh my God, I'm sick and tired of giving up rounds and losing to less talented players, right? You ever say that to yourself in a round? Why can't I ever take my game from the range to the first tee? Why is it that I struggle with that? Okay. If I was playing great, then all of a sudden I had one bad hole and my round was shot. And just the other day, I had a player call me and say, Doc, man, let me tell you about my round. And I said, hey, tell me about where you struggled. Okay, well, on 4, I did this. I said, no, you're giving me the specifics. I want the emotional attachment to it. Another thing that we hear all the time is wherever I go through my routine, I can't seem to block out distractions. Like today, my mind was just not very focused. Or, Doc, every time I try to think positive, just the negative thoughts creep in. Now, I know that these are like looking in a mirror. It's like playing it back to you. Think about how many rounds that these are the standard thought process versus the ideal. Isn't that crazy that this is how we see our game and how we reflect back. And yet if we were a coach and one of our players told us this, we would listen to it, oh, but, or, hey, how about that? And we would flip it on them. We'd flip the script on them a little bit. These thoughts that we have running through our head, they're automatic, and they're so overlearned that they become the standard versus really the abnormal. These don't sound like mental skill sets, right? They sound like frustration, disappointment, and anger. So we're going to come back to this in a minute. For those of you who don't know me, for those of you who are learning about me for the first time and saw some information on this and wanted to jump in, let me give you a little bit of a background about me. I'm a clinical and sports psychologist. It means I'm trained with my PhD in clinical psychology. I specialize in the way that the human body works within medical conditions, physical conditions, injury rehabilitation. I'm the sport and performance psychologist to 12 PGA Tour players. I've also coached and still coach several on the LPGA, the web.com, and elite college players, as well as on the Symetra Tour and PGA Latin America, PGA China, PGA Canada, Canadian Tour. Work with multiple college golf teams. I'm also the sports and performance psychologist for the University of Alabama Athletic Department. And sorry, my team is checking to make sure how everything's going. They're just checking up on me. And so I work with all sports there. I was a college baseball player. I played at Louisiana State University. I was on 2 national championship teams, won won 3 conference championships, pitched in the 1994 College World Series. And it wasn't until my own struggles as an athlete did I turn to the mental side of the game, which actually unlocked me to become a psychologist. And if it wasn't for that, I would still be probably searching for my purpose. I found my purpose because I love the game. Just this week, if you check out this month's edition of Golf Magazine, it's the May edition, but of course we release it in April. There's a nice 2-page article that they featured me because May is World Mental Health Month. And so hopefully to give you some insight on that. So make sure you check out that May issue as well. And I've been on the Golf Channel's Morning Drive as well as Michael Breed's show, The Golf Fix, several times. So I love what I do, but let's dig in to you. So how did I make this transition from baseball to golf? I'll give you a little bit of my background in golf. I started playing golf when I was 5 or 6 years of age. Thank you, Wendy, for a great article. I started playing golf when I was 5. My dad was stationed overseas in the Philippines as the United States Air Force, and there's things to do. And so we played golf, and I loved the game, but I loved baseball more. My dad was a college baseball player as well, and I loved the game of baseball. I didn't reconnect to golf after that period in the Philippines until I was in high school. And when I went to LSU, we started playing golf after practice because it was fun. It was fun to get out there and go compete and have a great time with my teammates. And we played. And I didn't know much about the game, but I knew I loved the athletic side of the game. So golf became a rescue for baseball for me. It's where I could go and I could visualize and I could see and I could create on the golf course. And I loved the competition, the camaraderie. So when I got done with my graduate training and I got done with my schooling, I did my internship at Brown Medical School and then worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 8 years. I tried to play golf weekly. Loved getting out on the golf course and being in the serenity of the moment. I love the cerebral side of baseball, and it was a perfect fit for me for golf. And I had an opportunity to start working with some young players, and it just started growing. But I made a decision early in my career that in this performance side is that I wasn't going to try to be a golf psychologist. I was going to bring the learnings that I had as a clinician, and I was going to bring the learnings that I had as a pitcher to golf. Baseball and golf are a lot more similar than they're not alike. And in particular, the psychological movements and thought processes of a pitcher are so similar to a golfer. To me, it was scary. So let's take a look at it. You hear people say in baseball is a game of failure. It's how you manage the failure. Heck, if you fail 70% of the time as a hitter, you'll still be in the Hall of Fame. Well, to me, I saw a writer one day say, you know what? I don't like to see him say it's a game of failure. It's a game of opportunity. That Hall of Fame player is the player who can show up to the box, step into the box, step up to the plate, 0 for 3 in the game, and still deliver in their 4th at bat. That's a Hall of Famer. Golf's the same way. I've had 2 players break 59 in competition. One on the web, Steven Yeager, first time ever, and a young kid by the name of Bobby Wyatt when he was a junior player, a longtime player of Tony Ruggiero's down at the Dew Sweepers. He shot 57 in an Alabama Golf Association, the state junior. And neither player had their game that day. They played great, but neither player said they had everything at their disposal. They just took advantage of opportunities. And Steven has some great podcasts that he's done over the years talking about that 58. I think it was a week or two before Jim Furyk broke 59 on the PGA Tour. But he told me, he said there were a couple holes I didn't hit great wedges and I made the putts. And then other holes I hit great wedges and had to make the short putts. It's a game of opportunities. And we oftentimes see in golf that the game is managing frustrations and failure as opposed to rising up to the opportunity before you. I watch the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour incessantly. I watch it all the time because I'm always learning. Great players make the turn on Sunday in the final 9 holes, and it gets real then. And when it gets real, it's the players that take advantage of the opportunities and the good breaks. They manage the struggles. They're not overcoming failure, but they're finding opportunity within the failure. As a pitcher, it's the same way. Everyone always says it's embarrassing to get, to miss a 3-footer or to flub a chip. Embarrassing is giving up a home run with a fully packed stadium around you and having the opponent run around the bases and celebrate. while the umpire waits to throw you the ball back. That's embarrassing. But a great pitcher has to come back to the next hitter with the next opportunity, not to overcome failure. When they try to overcome failure, they throw too hard, they overthrow to the next hitter, and they fall behind in the count. And the next thing you know, they're in trouble. Both of them require you to manage the emotional roller coaster. Players are so defined by their ups and their downs. I pretty much feel pretty strongly about this, that as a psychologist working with players, I'm the first one to be criticized and the last one to receive the congratulatory text. Now, I don't mean congratulations like Brett, congratulations. I mean like, hey, we won, or hey, I won and thank you for your help, or hey, I won, yay. A lot of times what happens is we are so caught up when it's awesome. When we leave the course that day, we feel like a rock star. It's phenomenal. We're so caught up in that feeling of euphoria that we forget what got us there. And it usually wasn't a brilliant warm-up. We didn't wake up that morning and put our socks on just perfectly. We didn't maneuver around the golf course that day in just flawless execution like it was a Shell's Wonderful World of Golf. And we didn't hit every ball dead center. Because when it sucks, it also is not as bad as we think it is. I've had a player recently tell me that a lot of the frustration was not because it was really that bad. It just wasn't as good as they thought it would be. So they thought it was going to be really bad. So the frustration got really high. Well, that was an interesting comment. Both sports are really about their averages, their emotional average, and how you can stay emotionally flexible through that. I'm going to come back to that as a mental mistake here in a minute. But that a management of the emotional ups and downs and not being too high and thinking you're the greatest player to ever play. And at the opposite side, if you have a bad day, that you think you are the worst player, or, oh my God, how do you hit this shot? This is the worst shot I've ever hit in my life. You're a total idiot, right? I'm sure we've all said that. So this leads me, I'm going to do this a couple times during this webinar. I'm going to stop and ad lib here for a minute. If you coach juniors, here's a rule for you to communicate with their parents. And if you're a parent of a junior golfer, like I am, well, she's an 18-year-old now, so she's an adult. Scary. That means I have 2 adult children, even scarier. Is if they have a bad day in a tournament, don't run to the car, don't get on the phone with your coaches, and don't run to the range. Teach them that if they have a bad day, those downs, that they can sit around and talk with their friends, their competitors, everyone else. They can communicate. Hey, you had a bad day today. Oh my gosh, what did you shoot? Yeah, you know what? I had a bad day, but you played great. I mean, it's just a day. There's time to work on it when our emotions come down. So I want you to understand that baseball has spurts of emotion. I want you to be emotional. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but I don't want you to buy your emotional positives and try to sell all your emotional negatives. I want you to learn what your average is. Baseball and golf require you to stay average. Doesn't mean you don't pump up. It doesn't mean we don't drop down, but we know how to manage in the middle. Okay. Coaching has a great influence in both golf and baseball, but it's not as important as the player implementing the coaching. Let me explain. In football, I can teach you tremendous technique. I can teach you routes to run. And yes, you have to run the routes. You have to execute the routes. But there's not as much filtering of information and implementation. But if I'm teaching you how to throw a slider, and I show you a ball and I say, put your fingers here, and as your hand comes through, I want your index finger to push down through your thumb. You teach me that. If I do it exactly like you're telling me, I'm probably not going to have the same feel as you are. What great coaching in golf and baseball do is they say, look, Brett, when you throw this slider, I want you to feel as if, but I want you to go over there and play with it a little bit and make it yours. I think we got to do a better job of that in golf too, is to say, hey, listen, when you're hitting a 7-iron, and I want you to feel like the club is on plane, and I want you to deliver the club with this kind of strike. What I want the player to do is to say, what is the coach teaching me that I can implement? I get the spirit of it. It doesn't have to be verbatim, and it doesn't have to be without interpretation. I need to interpret it, because when I learned how to throw a slider, I gripped it different than everybody else, but I was able to get my finger on the seam exactly like I wanted to. I'll give you an example of that. One of my dear friends is an elite instructor, teaches some of the best of the best. And I went to see him because I was struggling with my chipping. And it was bad technique, no doubt about it. Bad grip, too strong of a grip, taking the club back, hooding the club, whatever. And he gave me the material. And I kept trying to do it exactly like he does it, because he taught it to me that way, and he's a brilliant short game player. But it wasn't until I bought a orange whip wedge trainer, swear to you, that I was able to implement what he was trying to teach me with a tool that wouldn't allow me to do it unless I did it right. My wedge game went from probably a 22 handicap to a low single digit handicap in a day. And it was because I took the information and the spirit of what he was telling me, played with it to make it my own, and made it work. Well, my pitching coach, who was my head coach in college, my golf coaches, the golf coaches I work with on the tour, or my elite amateurs, or my college players, they're always working to get their player, to get them in the right position to be successful. Continue to encourage them to filter the information and grab the spirit of what you want them to do to apply it. Both of these sports are critical. You can't teach somebody how to pitch. You can give them the information and they can develop their own pitching style. Same in golf. So let's dive in now. What are the 5 biggest mental mistakes that golfers make? And I'm going to go through each of these. And I'm going to go through them in a little different way, and I'm going to talk and go off topic and come back. So just let's buckle in and let's go for the ride. Number 1 is they're going to search for consistency. Too many golfers see this massive mistake. I'll come back to it. Number 2, people try to manage their emotions. I don't know what book's on the bookshelf that told us this, but you need to get rid of it or use it as a doorstop. For way too long, we've told our golfers to try to be unemotional, robotic, stoic out there. Now, trust me, I love the stoic mindset. That's not what stoicism is all about, to try to teach somebody to be unemotional. I went to the Augusta National Women's Amateur recently. I saw beautiful emotion out there, and I saw brilliant players. I watched players win and compete in every sport they're in by their emotion. So I'm going to come back to that. Another mistake that people make, and this one's natural, it's automatic, and it happens. I hear it all the time. Expectations. And as a result, they struggle to overcome adversity. Pretty much, if your round starts off maybe a bogey or a par, another maybe bogey or a par, and then hit the skids, boom, double, triple, your expectations are out of whack. I'll explain that in a little bit. Too many golfers try to eliminate doubts and negative thoughts. Like, positive thoughts are always able to be implemented in our head. Remember, we don't have thought bubbles over people's heads. We assume that a great golfer is coming down the stretch and has only positive thoughts. And you know what the old saying about assuming is? Just remember that. And then the last mistake is they try to take what they've done in the range game and transfer to the round. All right, so let's take a look at each of these. The first one is about consistency. Consistency is truly a myth. It doesn't really exist. Consistency is truly a myth in swings too. You know how we get a swing model? We take the average of a whole lot of people and we say, this is the right thing to do because this is the average of the average that we think everybody should be doing. But what we ignore is the individual experiences. I love gumbo. Gumbo is one of my favorite dishes from South Louisiana. I make my own gumbo. I have other friends of mine that make their gumbo. And everybody does it their own different way. Some people want a little bit stronger or smokier flavor. Some want it thicker like I do. Some want to have it with gumbo yaya, which is going to have the shrimp and the chicken and the sausage. And other people are going to want to have it with the seafood. I like a smorgasbord. The brilliance of consistency is once we accept that the game is not a consistent game, we can embrace what I call our psychological fingerprint. So let's take a look. Consistency is a myth. For some reason, we've looked at the statistical approaches, and we got to remember that everything averages together. It's more important to embrace your variability and your variance as opposed to being consistent. But I hear it all the time. When I sit down with people the very first time they come see me, I'll say, okay, so what do you want? What can I help you with? I want to be more consistent. I don't like mixing in a 77 every once in a while. Thinking, okay, so would you rather spend more of your time avoiding the 77? Or would you rather spend more of your time making those under par rounds go one shot lower? Because you can't have both. Hey, Joey, hello? Can you still hear me? Hopefully people, if you can still hear me, let me know. Let's do a mic check, voice check. Everybody still got me? I always get a little funky with the internet. I always worry about that. I'll keep going until I hear from everybody. Okay? So okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Yes, good to go. Okay, good. Yeah, you just sit there, you talk to a screen. I can see you guys there, but I just always want to make sure. Okay. All right. And so I want people to realize that if you spend too much time trying to prevent bad scores from happening, how are we supposed to have offense too? You can't play full prevent defense and still have offense. I would rather you be so focused on doing your job and getting the most out of it as opposed to preventing anything. But here's the mistake that we make when we say we want to be consistent. What you're really saying is, I don't want to feel the bad with the game. How can we not feel the bad if we want the good? Think about that. If we are mentally trying to prevent the negatives from happening, we're not putting all of our effort and intensity in making things for us. Make something happen. Embrace your variance. I think it was Scott Fawcett, who I love to death. I think he's great. I love his data. It fits me with the baseball mentality. And I don't remember if it was him or Dr. Brody had said the average dispersion of a PGA Tour driver is 65 yards left to right. And yet we, as players, want to be consistent. Rich Hunt, if you don't follow him on Twitter, please do. Richie3Jack. He and I were talking one day, and I think he had published an article somewhere that said that PGA Tour players win 80% of their money in 5 events of the year. The average PGA Tour player plays 25 events a year. So they're going to win 80% of their money in 20% of their events. So wait a minute here. The best players in the world who play in the best conditioned surfaces with the most consistent greens, the best chipping around the greens, the best sand, and they're the best players in the world, are only good 20% of the time. But they're best. I always tell my players, take a look at the PGA Tour stats. It's great. They have all the stats in the world. And take a look at leaderboards week in to week out. What we tend to do when we want consistency is we cherry pick other players that we emulate, are jealous of, and want to be like, and we blend them together into one super player, as opposed to realizing that we are going to have variance. Like, I love to play great golf. I love it. But I have to understand that there are certain days that I don't have it. But if I'm searching for consistency, what happens is I lose my ability to make the most out of every day because I'm stuck trying to live up to some unrealistic standard. I've got to be consistent. The average length, the average distance from the hole of a shot from 100 to 125 yards is right around 18 feet on the PGA Tour. But yet some weeks they hit it to 3 feet, and some weeks they hit it to 30. Hence, we have the average of around 18 feet, 17 feet. It's not consistency. When we're great, we need to be really good. So years ago, I came up with a concept called capability and capacity. And you may have heard capability and capacities in other areas. This is different. Probably if I'd come up with different terms, I'd call it something different now. But anyway, let's talk about it. Capabilities are all the abilities that you're wanting to be consistent in the heat of the moment. That's your talents, your skills, your abilities. You can hit a shot like this. You can use the bounce. You can putt. Okay, you get my point. But where we get in trouble as a player is when we go into competition and we use the moment, the round of golf, to prove and validate our abilities. So we lose our consistency because we're using every day to try to prove our abilities. And you'll hear yourself making comments like, I know I'm better than this. I should be able to hit a driver and play. Oh my God, if I'm going to not hit a driver off the tee, I should hit it in play. Well, okay, yeah, you should. But you can't do it every time. You're never going to have 100% of your abilities in the heat of the moment. And the reason for that is there's so many different things that are going to rob you of your abilities, weather, grouping. Sometimes you have so much power or you're hitting it so good and you hit it 10 feet too far over a green and now it's a really tough up and down. Okay. But capacity is your ability to make the most out of what you have in the moment. So I call it maximizing capacity. So let's assume that you walk out on the tee and you put your thumb on a screener and it says, hey, today, you have 71% of your abilities. The average player is going to panic because they don't have 100%. They're going to worry that they're missing 29% of their abilities. But a great player, people that I work with and people that I work hard on to understand, what I want them to do is I want them to say, well, I got 71%. Instead of chasing the 29 I don't have to try to prove some underlying ability, how about today in this round, I do whatever I can to get the most out of my game. That is consistency. It's a consistent mindset and approach to take on every challenge we have in front of us. If you want consistency, start focusing on that. So some of the things that I want you to do to enhance your ability to maximize capacity is to practice better. Show up every day with the same purpose to train and practice. There's a famous statement that I've made. I say it's famous because it's gotten a lot of traction over the years, which is I believe very strongly that golfers practice to fix problems. They don't train to master the game. If they understood how to master the game, we would train like basketball players. We take a lot of shots, we play a lot of scrimmages, and we compete better. We have to have a consistent approach to every shot. We have to have a consistency of execution of what we're doing. We have to have a purpose. Are we playing to prevent or are we playing with purpose? I want all of my players to compete with a purpose over prevention mindset. Purpose first, no prevention. I can deal with whatever consequences come my way. You should have a way of being consistent to review your performance. Every day, every round you compete and play, you should review the same way. I sell a journal in my office that has you every day lay out your plan for the day, but also what are the 3 things that I did well today? What are the 3 things I didn't do well today? And what are the 3 ways I'm going to improve going forward? Well, if you don't do that, then what happens is your emotions become your impression of your performance. And as a result, you're always chasing emotional confidence versus statistical or process confidence. And don't lose discipline. Do the same things over and over and over again. If you want to drive a nail into wood, you got to hit it in the same spot every day. Can't do a different dance before you hit the nail. So let's be disciplined in what we do. All right, let's go to number 2. Trying to manage emotions. First of all, there is no trying and there is no managing. There's rolling with them. If I took you to the ocean and said, I want you to stand right in front of these waves and I want you to beat these waves, you'll eventually be destroyed. Instead of fighting the emotional waves, I want you to learn to surf them. Emotions make us great. It's who we are. It gets us excited and pumped up and ready to rock. If you can celebrate your greatness, why can't you be angry if you struggle? I work with a couple players on the PGA Tour that are known for their anger. I've actually sent messages to writers and said, please, this is a lazy article. You don't need to write articles like this. You need to understand why their emotions, and sometimes they boil over, why their emotions are actually their asset. Your emotions allow you to connect. And if you're a high emotion player, don't bottle it up. But don't Don't do anything to disrespect the game, your family, your team, your purpose, the superintendents, anything like that, right? But also be careful of a couple other things. The first thing I want you to understand before we go to strategies is that there's two types of emotions. There's primary and secondary. And if you read my book, The Mindside Manifesto, you probably remember the section I talked about that. I'll give you an example. I hit a shot. And I hit an 8-iron, and it looks pretty good, and it comes up short. Okay, I'm ticked off. I'm in the junk. 3 holes later, I've now blocked a drive and hit it OB. My frustration has been building. But I've been telling myself, just stay in it, just stay. I've been doing all that self-talk, right? And now I fire the next one, and now I'm ticked. I'm like, God, Brett, you always do this in every round. Was it really the shot I hit out of bounds that led me to that second emotion? The first emotion was I was ticked, I hit it in the junk. But I used that negative experience to bring a judgment about myself, about some underlying insecurity. Our emotions must be separated from our judgments about ourselves so that we can explore insecurities. God, Brett, you always do this is really an insecurity that I can't execute under pressure. When you have an emotional experience, I want you to learn to understand where the emotion and the judgment is actually coming from. And don't fall prey to the emotional experience in that moment. The fear of embarrassment, the worry that people think you're going to be good, and so on. Or just beating the living you-know-what out of yourself. Learn to separate the two. Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was a brilliant psychiatrist and neuroscientist. He was an Auschwitz survivor. And in his book, he talked about the ability to separate and understand the purpose of where we were, to separate our suffering from our purpose, to find purpose in everything we do, and that will lessen the suffering. And he's also the famous writer who said we must put a space between our stimulus, what happens to us, and how we react and respond. Putting that space allows us to separate our emotions from our judgment. I love emotional players. I think Ian Poulter and players like him are fantastic. Just have to know what you're dealing with. In the superhero books and movies, sometimes the superhero's superpowers knock down buildings. It's okay. We'll deal with it. Just don't be disrespectful to the game. Number 3, expectations and overcoming adversity. I hear this one a lot. Doc, I've got high expectations. I thought I expected to play good. I had a great week of practice. Okay. Well, what happened? Why didn't you play good? Well, I thought I was going to play better. You cared too much. You got your hopes up. See, expectations are nothing but entitlements. They're based on things you've done in the past to try to overcome and create a better future because you're kind of fearful or doubting about the future and you have hope for a better future. But when you play great, you don't have any expectations. In fact, how many times have you been playing poorly with a bad range session and then I believe it will be, Jason. We'll get back to you. If you have a question about the recording, send it to basham@themindside.com, and I'll post that here in a little bit. How many times have you played poorly or warmed up poorly and then all of a sudden scored and found a rhythm because your care factor dropped? The standard expectation trap of a golf game is to start off a little shaky, collapse, lose all care in the world, and start playing great. Your tension level lowers. Will Robbins, who's a fantastic instructor from the West Coast, talks about how expectations with beginners has risen their tension levels to such a level that they can't play. So we got to lower expectations, but that doesn't mean I don't believe you don't think you should play well or you couldn't play well. But the game of golf is tough. Okay. You should expect nothing and compete for everything. Imagine if you went out to the game of golf and it was like one of those obstacle courses from the old ABC show, Wipeout. So you show up on the first hole. I got to run 18 obstacles today. You ready? Okay. You start running. And then boom, something hits you. Oh my God. What the hell was that? Oh, yeah, it's called a sand bunker, right where your drive line lands. Oh, okay. But I get back up. Now I'm going again. And I get slimed. What was that? Well, that was a missed 3-footer because somebody turned their spike when they left the hole in the group before, but you can't see it. You just create an indentation. See, the game of golf, when we have expectations, we in our mind have already laid out the perfect plan. It's not going to go according to any plan. Why don't we embrace the resiliency and the competitive mindset to make everything happen and abandon the need for consistency, not try to manage our emotions, and lock in for the ups and downs that are going to happen during the round of golf? I want you to be exhausted, like a prize fighter after 18 holes. Whew, man, that was a battle out there. And some days it's easier. Some days it's not. And some days you come in and it was kind of like, hey, it was okay. And other days you go, man, I am proud. I was X over through no, and I fought like hell. We don't write books about those types of days. We write books about the perfect walk of golf, finding your spirit and hitting the magical day. But if you remember, Golf in the Kingdom actually talked about what happened when we have expectations. They ruin us. Expect nothing. Compete for everything. Learn to face each challenge with your full intensity, with no understanding of the outcome, but for trying to create it. That leads us to the next one then. So when it gets hard, and it gets difficult, how do we eliminate those doubts, like those negative thoughts? And so we're going to cover a little bit about what are thoughts and doubts, and then the judgments and why those are the problem with them. So I want you to think back to a time in your life, maybe 15 years ago. You'd said, hey, if I could push ahead 15 years and I'd have this level of success and I'd played this and I'd experienced this, I won't have any stress or worry. Fooled you. You still do. You still have stress. You still have worry. You still have fears. You still have doubts. Okay. Let's say this. I want to be the greatest golfer of all time. Because then at that point, then I'll never have any fears or doubts. Really? Interesting. I think Tiger Woods still has them. I want to be coming out of the gates as the best player to come in this generation in a long time, like George Spieth. Yeah, but he's going through a struggle right now. And he's working his way out of it because he's doing it the right way. I want to be this amount of money in my bank account. Well, have you ever really met a content millionaire? They want 2 million, and they want 5 million, and they want 10 million. See, we're not built to be content. See, our brain, our mind, as intensity of the moment rises, hence, that's why you get nervous before you compete, because the intensity is rising to meet an uncertain demand. It doesn't know what it's going to face, so it's rising up to meet it. Okay? So, as your arousal is rising up, the mind has to go, oh, there's some potential threats on the horizon. Shoom, negative thought. Boom, doubt, negative thought, doubt, negative thought, doubt, negative thought. And what happens is the more you try to suppress them, or the more you try to manage emotions that go with them, the more they come, because the mind goes, ha, found a hot spot. That's an insecurity. Don't miss a short putt. Oh, God, I don't want to miss a short putt. Oh, my God, if I have to hit a 4-footer. In baseball, we used to have a term. We used to say, ball finds fear. In the bottom of the 9th inning as a reliever, every time we're in the heat of the moment, it's amazing how you throw this perfect pitch and you look over and that infielder that had been struggling all game and lost their confidence, the ball is bouncing toward them. But it's never bouncing towards them with the correct bounces. Now it's going to be bounce, and it's going to hit them. And they find fear. Well, you ever play with somebody who has the fear of short putts? What do they always have? 3 feet? Or like me, who doesn't really love short game? Well, what I always have, I have a weird lie short game shot. Okay? So you got to look at that instead of trying to suppress those negative thoughts and fears. Instead, why don't you embrace them and realize that they do nothing to you until you give them energy? How about just acknowledging them and not judging them? You're not a loser, an idiot, a weirdo. You're not weak to have the thoughts. Let's just lower the arousal. And instead of fighting the negative thoughts, take a deep breath, let them pass like the clouds, and then say, what do I want to do? What are my current abilities? It's amazing what happens with negative thoughts and doubts when we let them go. And then how about this one? The last one. So now we've talked about trying to be consistent. So we practice like crazy on the range. We want to try to manage those negative emotions. We want to manage, expectations, and we want to have more adversity and build resiliency in the face of adversity. Well, one of the biggest things is we try to take our range game to the round. Why is your game left on the range? Because the range is not like a round of golf. It's not. It's nothing like a round of golf. Just because you hit a golf ball at a target in a 120-yard wide range with a flag stuck on a fake mound, that is not the game of golf. You hit 15 7-irons in a row, and the first hole, you have to hit a 7-iron off an uneven lie to a tucked pin next to the water. Not the same thing. So you got to learn to transfer. Now, let me say something first. Pressure, intensity of the moment, competition. It impacts your game in 4 major areas: physically, psychologically, decision-making, and your resiliency. So the range game has none of that pressure. So we perform wonderfully physically with a lot of confidence psychologically. We make great decisions to keep hitting the ball at the same flag. And our resiliency is a stack of balls right next to us. Not like the game of golf. Golf goes out into a variable environment with changing demands, with changing expectations, even though we don't like them, they're realistic. And players assume that range game is going to transfer. I want to give you a challenge. I want you to find the busiest. Yes, Chris, the mindful practice and noting. I love it. Okay. I want you to go find the busiest highway in your city. And I want you to take a 16-year-old kid who's done some driving in their life, and I want you to practice them turning in your subdivision, parked in your driveway, revving the engine, turning on the blinker, and then I want you to turn them loose on the major highway. You feel comfortable? No chance. So instead, let's look at how we learn to get better in changing intensities. And instead of taking our range game to the golf course, why don't we realize our range game is a warm-up, and it is a sharpening of tools that we're going to apply to a golf course, not a validation. Remember that capability and capacity factor? When we're trying to take our range game to the golf course and we're getting frustrated because our expectations are too high and we can't manage our emotions, we're trying to prove our capabilities like it's a talent show. It's not a talent show. There's no dogs jumping up and down off of stools. It's people who get it done. You ever gone out and played golf with people who are phenomenal bettors? They are hustlers on the golf course. You wouldn't teach their swing. You wouldn't teach their putting stroke. You wouldn't teach their chipping stroke, and yet they still get the ball in the hole. Why? Because what they're most concerned about is getting in your pocket. So in baseball, we had what was called the inevitable 2. If you want your range game to transfer to the golf course, try this. In baseball, Coach Skip Burtman, who was my coach, used to tell us that the starting home team pitcher would give up 2 runs in the first inning 80% of the time because they didn't know what they had coming out of the bullpen. The game and the rhythm of the game hadn't been established. The umpire strike zone was still somewhat shaky, and so on. And so you had to be better. You had to simplify. You had to allow yourself to be a little bit more resilient during that factor and not try to play with high expectations. I like players to have a little bit of a strategy on the first hole and practice those shots on the range and visualize yourself doing that. Not really the shot itself, but the approach. If you like to hit driver on the first hole, even if it maybe doesn't fit a driver, but it's better than trying to hit a 3-wood, which you're not as confident with, hit the driver. Just know where you're hitting it. and make sure it's got a big enough landing area for you to get through it. But I watch young players all the time. They don't know how to get the ball in position. And what I want you to do in the first 2 holes is to play every hole backwards. Play your most confident shots into each hole based on playing the hole backwards. If I could drop the ball in the fairway exactly where you wanted it, then play to those targets. I watch too many players on a 400-yard hole and the young college males who typically overpower holes try to hit it 320 yards to get to an 80-yard flip lob wedge off of a tight lie to a tucked pin. It's disaster in the making. They hit it to 25 feet and they're ticked. If they instead would hit the high percentage shot to lay it up to 125, which maybe is their money yardage, which let me explain in a minute, they will actually start building momentum and confidence. They'll simplify the game. So one of the things I want all my players to do to implement this range game situation is to know what your money yardages are. If you know what your favorite yardages are, hit to those targets. Don't just thrash it and go find it. So if your favorite yardage is 136 yards, okay, and you have a 370-yard hole, don't try to drive the stupid green. Hit to that yardage. You'll probably make birdies more times than not. Now, I know what the data say on the PGA Tour, that they want to hit driver as much as they possibly can. But if that's the case, then why, when they get to a 460-yard hole, do they sometimes hit 3-wood? Because it's about position. In fact, you have more people hitting the green from the fairway much further back than they do closer to the hole. It gets harder the more offline you get. So in order to take your range game, let's not try to overwhelm our game. Let's play to the power of being in position instead of the first 3 holes trying to figure out what your round's going to be. Be very disciplined. Play every hole backwards and say, what do I want to hit in on number 1? What do I want to hit in on number 2? No, it's a par 5 and you want to go at it. That's okay. Just make it a high percentage decision. So recap. You can't be a consistent golfer. Let's embrace our variance. We can improve our level of consistency by improving and tightening our variance. But there's variation in there. There's very few things that don't have variance. Chick-fil-A, the U.S. Postal Service, some of the airlines, right? I'm not asking you to be United Airlines. Sorry if you work for United, and be highly inconsistent. What I'm asking you to be is, even the United States Postal Service delivers at 99.9% and still probably loses about 1 million pieces of mail a day. There's just a certain level of variance that occurs in the game of golf. Be better at the variance. Learn to accept how pressure and intensity impacts you physically so you can improve your variance of your swing, how it improves you psychologically about how you feel about yourself, your decision-making under the heat of the moment, and your resiliency. I don't want you trying to manage emotions. I want you to be who you are. And if you're an emotional person, like, you're Italian, okay, or Latin, it's fine. If you come from the Nordic and you're a little bit more like Iceman, because your emotions are that's fine. Be who you are. Just be who you are. Just don't disrespect the game. And I want you to be really good at overcoming adversity. If you par 15 holes and bogey the last 3, you're going to feel disappointed. But you'd be happy if you bogeyed the first 3 and par the last 15. Same score. Don't write a story that you can't really keep. Keep working it. And you're never going to eliminate the negative thoughts and the doubts. They are what they are. Learn to deal with them. Overwhelm them with your beliefs. And your range game will transfer to your round when you start playing golf instead of playing range game out on the golf course. Okay, so I hope this is helpful. Now, I'm going to give you something here. And just, I'm not selling you. This is a free webinar. There's no hook. But as a business owner, I'd be remiss if I just didn't pass this on to you. Okay, so let me just give you this right now. So what I did a couple months ago is I started what's called the Insiders Club. And it allows me to bring information from inside the PGA Tour and the way I work with my players to you. It's a monthly coaching platform. It's just exclusive. We have an online chat board every Sunday night after the tournaments. I go on and I do a video. It's open for your interactions as an insider. I think it's phenomenal. Okay. Join now. You get 7 days for free. It's $19 a month. I'm telling you, it's well worth the information. I'm very interactive with it, and I want you to get the most out of it. It's members only. It's a golf community where mentally I'm going to help you to help what you do in your game. Live video podcast, Q&A sessions with me, and player interviews when I'm out on the road. I'm going to give you some exclusive drills. We have an amazing video library that's already loaded up and ready to go for you. Written articles and interviews with some of the golf influencers. In fact, at the PGA show, I probably did interviews with 18 different PGA level coaches. Those are all coming to the Insiders Club. They're not going on the podcast right now. Just a lot more. Okay. So how do you join? You click the join now on the right side of the page. It says join now, get 7 days free. Seriously, it's a great deal. After 7 days, if you don't like it, get out. It's free. Got nothing there. Okay. But I'd love for you to join it. Let me show you. It's $19 a month after that. It's worth much more. In fact, one of the video courses that we initially had created to sell on our video platform, we've now unleashed it to the Insiders Club. That alone was going to be about probably around $149 offering. So you're getting your money's worth, at least in the first 6 months with that. Okay. Join now. You'll receive 7 days for free. All right. Now, that was just allowing me to do the 30-second pitch. I appreciate being able to do this. The response off of this webinar was ridiculous and exciting and humbling to me. If you want more about what we're doing, please check me out at brettmccabe.com. You got to listen to my podcast called The Secrets to Winning. We recently renamed the podcast from the Mindside podcast to The Secrets of Winning. And I just recently recorded an interview with a Hall of Fame offensive lineman who is entering the Hall of Fame this year, this NFL class, as well as some of the best at what they do. It's getting better. And more importantly, I hope you continue to see the value. And make sure you check me out on all the social media channels. Honestly, I've got help there now, and people say they really like the social media is so much better because of the help we have there. So working better. I'm now going to turn it over to you to answer any questions that you got. If you have a question for me, send it in the chat window, and I will spend the next few minutes here answering questions for you. And thank you for coming on. Hope everybody got something out of this. Hey, Alex, thanks. I appreciate that. Alex said, great stuff. You're spot on. I'm a college coach. Keep leading these young men and women to learning about resiliency. It's not about playing their best days. It's about getting the most out of every day. Even one or two shots can spark it. Heath Slocum, 4-time winner on the PGA Tour, told me years ago that in the fourth 9-hole segment of a 36-hole day U.S. Open qualifying, and he had no chance to qualify. Everyone told him he should have quit. But on that fourth segment of 9 holes, he found a click in his swing that led him to winning 3 times on the web and 4 times on the PGA Tour. Too many people want to abandon. Ian Poulter told me years ago at dinner. I asked him, I said, Ian, why are European players winning everything? He said, American players are being trained that they can play great golf when they have their stuff. For some reason, Europeans are just much more resilient and gritty. I think we as instructors have to train the difficulty of the game and not the ease. Hey, Martin, thanks. You rock. I appreciate that. Any other questions? I'll stay on here for another minute or two just to make sure. There is a little bit of a lag from the time you type the question to the time it gets to me. Thanks, Steve. Elizabeth, we need our players to be more adaptable on the golf course. While TrackMan and technology is great, it's making all juniors look for the perfect swing all the time. Does not exist. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Where is TrackMan not? It is not on the golf course. Now, it may be on a tee, but it's not from shot to shot. Shot to shot requires you to adapt and work through different challenges. Think about golfers like free throw shooters and 3-point shooters. Okay? I love that. Love the ability to work and shoot. And sometimes a 3-point shooter sets up on the corner and their feet are a little sideways. But because they did the discipline of their training, they have the foundation for their success. I want them to be more adaptable. So what we're training is we're losing the competitive mindset of our youth athletes because we're over teaching them. It's not that I don't want you to keep teaching them. What I want you to do is help them bridge the gap between what you want them to do and what they feel. Let's get to the spirit of intensity, not to the absolute certainty. Kathy, can you tell us about your practice journal? And thank you, Wendy. I'll see you this weekend at my tour experience. Make sure you check those out, where I take players on the golf course for 6 hours. Oh, God, what a great day. Treat you like a tour player. We have great lunch, food, teach you to play out at a beautiful course I'm a member at. See some of my good friends, too. So, Kathy, can you tell us about a practice journal? Yes, it's available on our website, brettmccabe.com. It's for each quarter. There's a little assessment in the beginning, and on one side of the page, it tells you about how to plan your day and what the intensity of the day is going to be, purpose. And the flip side is those threes, the nines, 3 things you did well, 3 things you didn't do well. And you can buy that at brettmccabe.com. It's great, and we just redesigned it. Leonard, how do I get them to stop thinking about something wrong? Get them to tell you about what they want to do. We can't fight the negative thoughts. Great trick. And if my buddy's still on here, Scott's still on here, he'll tell you, if I call my shot on the course, I hit the ball so much better. Get them to tell you what they want to do, and they'll be successful. Craig, how do you keep playing great when the fear of losing is in the back of your mind? Of course it's in there. It's always in there, right? It's always in there. Come on. I was always fearful of losing my wife. She's going to find somebody better than me. But I have to give her everything I got. The very first time I ever worked on the PGA Tour, I was at a major. I was walking down the course with Graham McDowell, first PGA Tour client of that level, and Rory McIlroy. Swear to you. And I text my wife and I go, "What the hell am I doing here?" And she texted me back and she said, "Just give them everything you got. If it's good enough, it is. If it's not, it's not." Well, it's been good enough for 7 years. And Graham has been a long-term client, 8 years now. And glad to see him win this past month at the Dominican Republic. Awesome, awesome dude. So, you know what? One of the other things, Craig, golfers eat so bad on the golf course, it's comical. If you hydrate and feed your brain, many times those negative thoughts go away. Eat better on the golf course. One of my favorites is peanut butter and honey on whole wheat, or just any kind of bread, or mix some peanut M&Ms in with some grains that you like. I know we're all supposed to stay away from carbs, but when you're competing, it's better than that. How do you select my guests for my podcast? Jeff Boss interview was outstanding. Yes, it was. Jeff is phenomenal. Anybody who goes to Navy SEAL training, to me, is going to have a great story. Honestly, we have a team in the office that comes together and we work to try to find who we like. And sometimes it's people that strikes one of us, or sometimes it's somebody who we've learned about. I try to find guests that not everybody's heard before versus seeing them on 6 other podcasts telling the same stories. I kind of like to uncover some of the secrets out there. Joey, what are your thoughts on the idea of less is more? So many times after every swing, the player wants feedback or the instructor wants to give. Okay. I tell all my coaches to carry a little notebook with you and don't give feedback on every swing. You don't know what the player was thinking. They may have been trying to do something. Just write notes. Same with parents, and you're watching your kid play. Write your notes down and then allow yourself to organize. It's not about less. It's about more focused. Be more focused in your delivery and more focused on what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. All righty. Well, I hope this was of value to you guys. This was definitely of value to me. I'm excited to be able to do this. We're going to be doing more of them. Please check out the Insiders Club for me. Trust me, I promise you're going to get your $19 a month, $20 a month. I promise you're going to enjoy the content. You're going to get something out of it. And if you don't, let us know. But you never know until you try. I think we're going to have the replay will be up there. And thank you, Susan, for all you've done to help us grow. I think the webinar will have that, but if you reach out to Basham at the Mindside, it's BASHAM at themindside.com. He can get you whatever you need. Most importantly, go out and enjoy this week. Get the most out of everything that you do. Realize that golf, just like life itself, is not about the ease. It's about the management and the flow. Go ride those waves of adversity and make them the best ride of your life. Y'all have a great one, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks again for all your support.